for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you.
Hi, I'm Dave Dooling, Education Director at the New Mexico Museum of Space History. It's been a rough year, so now is the time to take another look at how three men brightened the end of 1968, an equally rough year. While men and women have spent many a holiday in remote locations and extreme danger, the Apollo 8 mission became the first time that anyone spent it off-world. It was not the original plan. After Apollo 4 and 6 demonstrated that the Saturn V rocket worked, the Apollo 8 mission was scheduled as an Earth orbit test with a lunar module. But the LEM had problems that would push its manned debut from 1968 into 1969 and possibly push the landing into the next decade. NASA did not want to break momentum, and U.S. spy satellites showed that the Soviets had assembled a super rocket that might get them to the moon first. In 1968, Apollo manager George Low proposed that the first manned Saturn V fly astronauts around the moon. This would test everything except the LEM and keep the schedule for a 1969 landing. Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama was in charge of the Saturn V moon rocket and started charting trajectories. NASA was still recovering from the Apollo 1 tragedy and had not yet flown the first manned Apollo mission. So they worked in secret. But Jack Hartsfield, science editor of the Huntsville Times, got wind of the plan and wrote it up. Top managers at Marshall persuaded the paper to sit on the story. About the same time, the Soviets' Zond 5 spacecraft, based on their manned Soyuz, flew around the moon and returned to Earth. Russian cosmonauts pranked the United States by relaying their voices from ground control through the spacecraft so it briefly appeared as if Russia was about to land. Finally, an official at NASA headquarters prodded the Times into running the story. In October, with the Apollo 8 stack visible in the background, Apollo 7 launched on a successful 11-day mission in Earth orbit. The path to the moon was open. The crew would be Gemini veterans Frank Borman and Jim Lovell and rookie Bill Anders. Retraining and preparations and the need for sunlight to photograph potential landing sites set the date at late December. The crew would arrive on Christmas Eve. Apollo 8 launched on December 21 and 3 days later fired its service engine to drop into lunar orbit. As the spacecraft came around the far side of the moon, the crew captured the most famous images of Earth. Anders later commented, "We came all this way to explore the moon, and the most important thing that we discovered is the Earth." Meanwhile, America was ending a rough year. North Korea captured a U.S. spy ship and held the crew prisoner for 11 months. The Vietnam War was ripping American society apart. Civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. and presidential candidate Robert Kennedy were assassinated. So what to say from a distant world? After working over different ideas before the mission, the crew settled on a reading from the book of Genesis.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good.
The mission was not over, of course. After just 10 orbits of the moon, they reignited their engine to head home. This was on the lunar far side, out of touch with Earth. Radio contact resumed as Apollo 8 sailed over the horizon.
Roger. Please be informed there is a Santa Claus.
On the way home, they learned how successful they had been.
Go ahead, Houston.
We received a number of congratulatory telegrams in the past few hours, and if you don't mind, I'd like to read a couple to you.
That sounds good. Go ahead.
Here's one that reads, "Congratulations on one of the greatest achievements made by man. You have turned into reality the dream of Robert Goddard." And it's signed Charles Lindbergh and Ann Mara Lindbergh. This one is addressed to Frank Borman, James Lovell, and William Anders. Good luck and Godspeed. And it's from Lyndon Baines Johnson. And you got one from a Mrs. Valerie Pringle. I'm sure that's not a name that any of you recognize. It's just a telegram that one of the public affairs officials at NASA picked up because he liked it. Mrs. Pringle writes very simply, "You saved 1968.
Christmas dinner was turkey, like military rations, but Borman made them skip the 3 miniature bottles of brandy the chief astronaut Deke Slayton has smuggled aboard. And then Time magazine picked them as 1968's Men of the Year. The next astronauts to spend Christmas in space were the last crew of the Skylab space station in 1973. Overworked, low in morale, and without decorations, they improvised a tree from empty food cans. Flight surgeons, though, stopped them from eating the ham dinner because they did not want the high salt content to alter metabolic tests. Other astronauts have observed religious holidays in their own ways. After Apollo 11 landed, Buzz Aldrin, an Episcopalian, celebrated communion. In June 1985, Sultan Salman Al Saud of Saudi Arabia observed Ramadan during Shuttle Mission 51G. Weightlessness made prostration for prayer difficult, but he did not have to fast, which flight surgeons don't like during a mission, after an imam reminded him that it is not required on travel. Jeffrey Hoffman, the first Jewish astronaut, celebrated Hanukkah with a small menorah and a dreidel during STS-61, a Hubble repair mission in December 1993. In December 2006, Sunita Williams on STS-116 took a copy of the Bhagavad Gita and a Christian cross to honor her Hindu father and Slovenian Catholic grandmother. In 2019, Jessica Meyer celebrated with festive socks and tweeted, "Happy Hanukkah" to all those who celebrate it on Earth. And for the past 20 years of continuous habitation on International Space Station, different crews have celebrated the holidays with a range of decorations and meals. However you observe them, the New Mexico Museum of Space History and the Department of Cultural Affairs wish you a happy holiday season and a great 2021.
And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
Thanks for watching, and tune in next year for more stories from space.